Hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. Nothing quite says closure like selling off your ex's designer junk and overpriced coffee maker. Today on rSpace, if you've ever wondered what true catharsis looks like, this might just be it. Wife spent all our money on her affair partner, so I sold all her luxury items and left her broke. I, 32 male, have always been a nose to the grindstone type. Always believed in working hard so I could earn a lot. I started hustling from high school and launched 3 different failed businesses in college. With a combination of luck, good timing, and 2 huge clients, my next business found major success in my senior year. I met my wife, Lisa, about a year after that. I wasn't rich back then, but I was doing pretty well for someone who had just left college. She was still in college at the time, with no real career plans. I always tried to talk her into setting up a business of her own and figuring out a career path, but she never took it too seriously. She just wanted to graduate, find a job, and work. Honestly, she didn't even seem too eager to do that. I won't lie and pretend she wasn't materialistic. I knew what she liked from the beginning. She came from a poor background and was always fascinated when we went on dates and trips to places she'd never been before. So yeah, she had expensive tastes, but I figured she was just making up for everything she couldn't have before. She loved gifts too. I didn't find that weird because everyone loves gifts, right? But the more expensive it was, the happier she'd be. I didn't mind. It made her happy, and I had the money to afford it. Lisa is a huge extrovert. She's the type that can't really enjoy a quiet night in. I'm not an introvert myself, but I prefer staying in and working or enjoying a show. This didn't cause much conflict between us. We just came up with a compromise. We went out together at least once a week, and we'd spend 2 nights on a nice dinner and movie indoors. We could spend the other night of the week however we liked. I prefer to get some work done or catch up on movies. More often than not, my wife would go out with some friends. I didn't suspect anything about her girls' nights for a long time. I'd met her friends, and they even came to pick her up sometimes. They were all married and seemed reasonable enough. She usually came home when she said she would, and she was never drunk. Maybe a little buzzed sometimes, but that was it. So how did I find out something was wrong? It was the cards. One evening, I noticed an odd charge on my credit card. After a quick Google search, I found out it was a men's jewelry store that I was sure I'd never been to. That was concerning. My first thought was that my card had been stolen somehow. I decided to do some more digging before I went calling the bank. That's when some other transactions started jumping out at me. There were restaurant bills for places that I was sure we'd never gone as well. Some of them seemed to be dated to nights when I was sure I had been at home. Something wasn't adding up. These transactions were going back weeks. I knew I still had my credit card. There's no way it could have been stolen. I spent 10 minutes bouncing ideas around, trying to figure it out. That was when I remembered that Lisa was also an authorized car holder on my account. There had to have been some sort of explanation. At first, I wanted to wait for her to get home so I could ask her about it and figure out what was going on. But the more I went through the card statements, the clearer the image became. She was cheating on me. There were 2 motel visits in the statement, each for 1 night only. As soon as I saw that, I felt alarms go off in my head. I looked through the statements again more carefully, noting every single transaction that seemed out of place to me. It painted a picture of her buying gifts and going on dates with someone else, and this had all been going on for several weeks at least. When she got back home that night, I was extra observant. I really didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. I asked her how her night had been, and she started telling me about how much fun she'd had with her friends that night. I found myself wondering how much of what she was saying was true. Those dang card transactions kept flashing through my head. I played it cool, trying to hide the doubt I was feeling inside, and she didn't notice that anything was wrong. She showered and went to bed, and I took my chance. I know every guy says this, but I swear, I'm not the type who snoops around. But that was when I trusted her. Now it was fair game. I guess you could say I had probable cause. Getting into her phone was easy. She hadn't changed her passcode since she first got her phone. It took a while to find what I was looking for, and for a while, I allowed myself to be a bit hopeful. I really wanted to be wrong. If I was lucky, I wouldn't find anything. I'd call the bank and clear it up, and I'd be able to move on from this sickening suspicion. Unfortunately, I wasn't that lucky. I came across a message chain with a guy named Dylan. He and Lisa had been talking for a few months, and they had seen each other more than a few times. From what I could make out, they'd slept with each other at least twice, which matched up with what I'd seen in the card statement. Apart from that, they went shopping together and went on dates. I couldn't believe it. Lisa was really having an affair, and with some guy that she was treating like her boy toy. At first, I thought it didn't seem like her at all, but I guess I never really knew her. And then there were the gifts. She'd been buying watches, shoes, and even AirPods for him. She was spending my money on her affair partner. I think that was when my feelings towards her changed. The betrayal was too deep. I worked my butt off for years to build a good life for us. I gave her the very best life I could, and she chose to spoil some other guy? I couldn't remember the last time she'd gotten a gift for me. Honestly, that hurt as bad as the infidelity. I was going through her messages with Dylan when I was hit with another suspicion. Her friends had to be in on it, right? If she was using girls' nights as a cover, then they probably just pretended to pick her up whenever they came around. I found her messages with her friends, and sure enough, I was right. Sometimes she'd ask them to pick her up when they were going out, so I wouldn't suspect anything. Then she'd split off from them and meet up with Dylan. I couldn't believe the amount of planning she put into this. This wasn't just some emotional mistake. This was carefully planned infidelity. She messed up with the cards, though. Maybe she thought I wouldn't scrutinize the statements as much as I did. I exported the chat logs and emailed them to myself. I've heard enough stories like this, and I know how bad it can go if there's no evidence. When it comes down to he said, she said, he always loses. I couldn't sleep that night, not after what I'd seen, and especially not beside her. I spent the whole night planning out what I was going to do next. I'd always pictured my whole life with her, but now I felt lost. In the morning, Lisa came downstairs and found me on the couch. She asked if I slept down here. I ignored her question and told her to tell me about Dylan. She did such a good job at acting confused that I almost believed her. I told her not to play dumb. She'd been spending hundreds of dollars a month on him in my expense, so it was only a matter of time before I found out. She was quiet, probably thinking of what to say. After a moment, she started apologizing. She swore she didn't mean it. She said she met him online, and she'd felt bad for him because he was struggling. I asked how her screwing him helped with his struggles, and she went pale. Her answer was more BS. She claimed she'd been depressed, and she turned to Dylan for comfort. I asked if she didn't see a problem in looking to comfort for another man. I was angry as hell and shouting at her, and she got defensive. She screamed back that it was my fault, that I was the one who drove her to this. I was so bewildered that I actually laughed. I dared her to explain how. She started some sob story about how she hadn't felt fulfilled in a long time. She didn't like her job, and her career wasn't going anywhere. And I just threw my success in her face. I might have felt bad for her if I didn't know it was total BS. Lisa didn't give a dang about her job. She didn't even want to work, but I insisted. And all that stuff about me rubbing my success in her face? Odd how she never complained when it was time to spend my money, especially when she was spending it on some other guy. I told her I needed to leave, and I think that was when she realized how serious this was. She stopped trying to pin the blame on me and started begging me to forgive her. I don't think I've ever seen her cry that hard. I felt the slightest bit of pity, but when I remembered every layer of her betrayal, the pity died like a squashed bug. I just stood there, watching the woman I'd once loved and respected sobbing as she begged me to forgive her for using me. I felt numb. Maybe it was exhaustion from not sleeping all night, or maybe I was just crushed by realizing my relationship was a lie. I just grabbed my keys, pushed past her, and left. Things have been cold at home since then. I don't sleep in our room and I barely speak to her. I know something needs to be done, and I know it needs to be done soon, but I feel paralyzed. I keep hoping there's some other way to fix things without needing to call it quits, but I know that's not likely. I guess I'm just posting here so that you guys will talk some sense into me and give me the guts to do what needs to be done. Here's the thing, OP. There's no fixing this. That wasn't a moment of weakness or one-time mistake. She planned this, covered her tracks, poorly but still, and continued to lie even when confronted. And let's not forget that she didn't just cheat. She used your hard-earned money to spoil someone else. That's an entirely different level of disrespect. Update. Yeah, it's over. Like I said in the first post, I knew it was going to end in divorce, but I was deep in denial. You guys talked some sense into me, and I spoke to a lawyer immediately. He was a great help, and we got started on a divorce right away. Most importantly, he gave me advice on how to protect my assets since I earned considerably more than she did. The fact that I started my business before I met her meant that she wasn't entitled to it, though he claimed that wouldn't stop her from trying to get a part of it. He also pointed out that the financial infidelity was really going to help my case. In the meantime, we remained in the same house together. She refused to leave, and my lawyer had told me not to leave either. Giving up the house to her would make it very difficult for me to get it back. It was a miserable arrangement, and I hated every second of it. I tried to avoid her as much as possible, so I stuck to my home office and slept in the guest bedroom. She had different plans. She tried everything she could to get me to forgive her. She tried cooking for me, talking to me, and even inviting me to our bedroom to spend the night. I mostly ignored her and only spoke to her as much as I absolutely needed to. At some point, she broke down and went into the classic, "I'll change" speech, promising to be a better wife. I didn't buy it for a second. She was just scared that she would be losing the comfortable life she'd gotten used to taking advantage of. At one point, she tried guilt-tripping me, talking about how she had nothing without me and how she'd given everything to our marriage. I snapped and reminded her that she'd slept with another guy. She'd spent my money on a guy who hadn't done a thing for her, while I was the one who had built that life she lived. She had the nerve to cry and call me cruel. That was when I realized that I was handling this all wrong. I was waiting for the divorce to sort things out for us while I attempted to coexist with her. No more. I was done. She didn't respect me when we were married, so she could never respect me now. So I was going to teach her a lesson. I waited until she was out at work, and then I made my move. I was going to hit her where it hurt. I knew how much she loved her luxury nonsense, her bags and shoes and dresses. So I was going to take that all away from her. I gathered up every single expensive thing that I had ever bought her and loaded them all into her car. I even took her overpriced coffee maker. And then I sold everything. I posted all of it online. Some of them got some offers the same day, and the rest of it stayed in my car. When she got home, she was furious. She absolutely lost it, screaming, crying, and accusing me of theft. I just told her that it was my money, and I was taking back what was mine. She threatened to call the police, and I told her to go ahead. I had receipts proving that I was the one who paid for everything. That got her to shut up. Selling her things really shook her. She wasn't asking for forgiveness anymore. She realized just how much I hated her for what she'd done to our relationship. A few days later, after I sold all of her stuff, she came to me and asked me to help her out. I could tell that it was hard for her to come to me, but it seemed like she had no other option. She told me that she wanted to move out of the house because the energy was making her miserable, but she had no savings. Her job didn't pay well, and I'd canceled her cards. I told her I wasn't going to help her. If she really needed help affording a place, she could go and talk to Dylan. Hell, she could move in with the guy for all I cared. She didn't say anything about that, but from the way her face crumbled, I could guess that Dylan wasn't an option anymore. The guy probably left her the moment he realized that she was broke and didn't have anything to offer him anymore. She spent a few days moping around after that and trying to get me to change my mind, but I didn't talk to her at all now. When she'd had enough for the silent treatment, she moved out and went to stay with her sister. I was glad to have her out of the house. I knew my lawyer wanted the best for me, but living in the same house as her had been hell, and now I had a stronger claim to the house. When I went to her sister's apartment to serve her with papers, there was no big reaction. She just signed with a resigned, "Okay," and that was that. I think she realized that there was no point in fighting anymore. Things were so broken between us that there was no hope of going back. She didn't look good when I saw her. The fancy clothes, manicure, and salon haircut were all missing. It looked like she was wearing her sister's clothes, too. It gave me a bit of indication to realize that she was discovering what it looked like when her husband wasn't there to foot the bill for her. The divorce was finalized a few months later. She fought hard to get a portion of my business, just like my lawyer predicted. But he was right. She didn't have a leg to stand on. She fought for alimony too, and it could have gone worse. She walked away with enough to keep her above water, but she wasn't going to be living the big life anytime soon. She didn't get the house either, which was probably in her favor. There was no way she'd be able to keep up with the payments now. I feel like I could breathe for the first time since I found out about her infidelity. I took some time to focus on myself. I traveled for a bit, going to countries I'd always wanted to visit, but Lisa had always refused because they didn't have enough of a nightlife for her. I connected with some old friends and tried to pick some old hobbies outside of my business. It hasn't been easy, but I feel like I'm healing. The pain is still there, fading slowly, but Lisa has been long forgotten, left in the dust while I move on to better things. The moment Dylan wasn't benefiting from her, he was gone. The moment you stopped engaging, she fell apart. She wasn't mourning the loss of you. She was mourning the loss of what you gave her. Have you ever held on to something or someone longer than you should have? And what finally made you let it go? Thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.